that's one thing about my wife is she really knows and works the part of like not enabling. I mean, like in my story, like, I pushed her to that point, but like in dealing with my daughter, and because she's actually my wife's stepdaughter. She's my daughter, who's the Morgan, who's the drug addict. It's my first wife, and like I tell you what, Flindt, she is. There's been times that I've had to lean in towards what Jenny wants, or not wants, or her what she has to say, and it's truth, and I don't. It's hard, and the daddy shit in me comes out. This poor kid, mother just died. She's like, that's horseshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's pretty straight up.
Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Andersen.
Boyce King, thank you for joining. Flindt Andersen, founder of Parents and Addicts in Need, and myself, Jason LaChance, on Don't Hide the Scars.
Hey, Boyce, how you doing, man?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
Looking good, my brother. And, kind of to share with people a backstory. This is what we mean, Flindt, when we've talked about like newcomers help the people that have been in recovery and how it's reciprocal is we became buddies through social media and just direct messaging, talking, sharing what's going on with ourselves, our families, our recovery, and everything. Yep. And so here we are 2.5, 3 years later, something like that. So
it's pretty cool.
It is. Absolutely. What happened in my story, when COVID hit, I was sober, but I wasn't doing very well. I was at the end of just a bad season of the job I was doing. I wasn't, I was just not right, man. And for a lot of reasons that we'll get into. But so, COVID hit, man, and I'm like barely hanging on to my sobriety. And I'm like, I'm in this house alone. My wife works in the healthcare field, so she did not get laid off of work. I got laid off because I'm a chef, used to be. So that business, kind of wedding business, was over, and so for a while, and I have some health stuff, so they were concerned. So I was here alone in my home, man, and I was just freaked out, and I just started reaching out. I started looking online for stuff. I'd never really been into any kind of online recovery. I started doing online meetings, and then I ran across a podcast called Mad Dog Recovery. It's got like some old timer Chris and Myers Ramers and those guys, and then I ran across, I don't know how, I ran across Knocking Doors Down, and man, and the rest is history. And I leaned into it, and man, it saved me. It set me on this road, like through, I started stalking you a little bit, Jason, sending messages. I'm like, this guy just has this real like humbleness, and this, it's like, what's the worst that could happen? And you responded, man. You were really kind to me and available. You were really available, which was cool. And then I started talking, I got in contact with Dr. Rob Kelly through your show, because he left his phone number there. He's like, call me. And I'm like, I'm going to call him. You know what I mean? So I called him, and like, he got back with me, and he kind of set me on the road of this, the last, 3 years of my sobriety, man, have been like the best. And it's because of really this, I connected with, your podcast, Dr. Rob. He was just like, he decided he worked a book with me, man, for free for like 9 months. Every week he gave me a free session, and we just read the book, the first 164 of AA, line to line by line with him, and it blew my head up, man. Yes, I met my sponsor through kind of a God thing, if you want to say, on a Zoom meeting that kind of pushed me through the work. Like, I felt like I needed to, because I was one of those guys that was going to 4 or 5 meetings a week and just wasn't getting it, because I wasn't hearing the right thing for me, the solution. So I got my sponsor, got me through the work really quick. The steps again, I've done the steps a bunch of times, but it was the real for the first time. I mean, I did my best 4-step, and man, I've done a few on the screen, bro, just like this with my sponsor, man. Some Greg R, who is some military hotshot like in DC, and it changed me, man. So.
Well, I think it's what Flindt talks about a lot, and what like the pleasure of working with you is you suit up and boot up and show up. And that's kind of always been a motto of Flint's, is like, don't tell someone you're going to do some shit, especially in this recovery game, and not do it. Right. I mean, it's like, and I don't know. I just like that kind of stuff always stuck with me. I don't even remember if that was our first conversation we had or what.
I don't know if it was the first, but I'm glad you got it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, in this thing, look, it's easier said than done sometimes, but you got to show up. Okay. I don't even care sometimes if you suit up. All right. Just show up, because we'll give you the armor. Other people in recovery will give you that armor to put on. We'll teach you how to put it on. We'll show you how to put it on. We'll even strap it on for you. Okay. But at some point, you're the ones that have to put it on every day. And then you got to show up. Again, it's that old stupid saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But good sponsors, other people in recovery, they're going to force you to drink sometimes, because that's what it takes for a lot of us. We're all hard-headed sons of bitches to begin with.
Right.
I mean, nothing. Hell, somebody tell me to do something. Okay, I'll do it.
Absolutely.
Well, it took a big buff guy when you got out of treatment to tell you you're doing 90 and 90.
Boy, 190 and 190. Boys, this guy was as big as a door frame. They had a temporary sponsor waiting for me when I got off the plane. And I'm looking up at this guy and I go, all right, man. I go, what do you want me to do? And he goes, first thing, I want you to go to 190 meetings in 190 days. I went, are you fucking kidding me? And he goes, no, I'm not fucking kidding you. And I looked at this guy and said, dude, I'm going to do whatever you want.
That's my sponsor, Greg R., he was pretty much like, look, you're going to do this my way. We're going to do it quick. I'm going to get you through the work fast while you're willing and your ass is on fire. And he said, he said, I want you to do this 4-step, and I'm going to, in 10 days, you got 10 days to do it. And I'm not saying, for me, that's what I needed.
Sure.
I've had, and I'm not knocking any of the sponsors I've had in the past. Some are sober and some aren't. But, for me, I needed that discipline. Like you're saying, I needed someone to really, I had to get in the book, man. I had my wife, she loved me, man. And I have every book, AA, literature, recovery. But man, I wasn't even looking in the big book.
Right.
And that's what between, the combination of Dr. Rob, who was like, he was like, look, first thing you're going to do is how he is. You're going to do this, or the hell with you. He was like, I'm not going to, if you don't do what I say, I'm not going to waste my time, because there's somebody else out there that is willing. So.
Yeah, when a man that can charge thousands of dollars an hour gives you his time for free,
you take it.
You do exactly
Absolutely,
what the hell they say.
I was early to every meeting. There were a couple times my techie stuff got messed up. I'm like freaking out. I tried to. I was always early, and it was awesome, man. And for me, I had a hard time getting through the book, because I'm not the best reader in the world. And he was very patient. And there were words in there I didn't understand. He showed me, that the must words, and like, this isn't like they're saying you should do this. All the power words, all that stuff. It was awesome. It was a great experience.
Yeah, I like my sponsor, Cody W, is that way too, and he's one of those like guys, you go in a meeting and somebody says progress, not perfection. He's like, shut the fuck up. It's spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. Get it right, So it's like, whoa, okay. But same, I had to kind of be rushed to keep that fire into me. I'm just one of those people. But talking about your wife, like, she was getting some help though too, because your wife didn't struggle with addiction, but we talked about some other programs, and she was doing Al-Anon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She's been in Al-Anon from the first rehab I went to. They told her, and she's a great speaker, man. She's the brains of this whole operation. But she said that they told her she had to go to the family group if you wanted to keep your marriage, and she did, and she got an Al-Anon all those years ago, and that's the only reason we're married after what I've been through my addiction and put my family through is she's involved. She works it like I do. She worked the steps, did the whole thing. She is, so definitely.
How do you reflect back and look at, like, what was little Boyce like? Did you struggle with addiction in the family? Was there trauma, the combination thereof? I mean, if you have an addict in the house, you're going to experience trauma as a child. It's just reality.
The way it is. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my dad was an alcoholic, and he was, but he never worked a program. So he was a nightclub musician. And so when he stopped drinking, he did it through God and church. And so what ended up happening in my case is we all ended up being in a family group growing up, and this traveling, it's this Christian thing. And, I was young, really young. And so that's really, and what happened for me is it became just forced on me, honestly. I don't know, forced on me. It was just all I knew, so, and it was kind of one of those things where, he was a perfectionist. We sang a lot. It was more there. It had pieces to it that were very, very unhealthy. He was a very sick man. He just died 3 years ago, and he had his own demons. And I don't know that. I'd say my dad was a dry drunk. I for sure. And I'm not saying you can't do the church thing and God thing, because I have that in my life. But I mean, for me, I have to use a programmer, and I need a combination. So yeah, I had a lot of trauma. I had some sexual trauma connected to the church as a young man, that was awful, and sent me spinning out of control young. I felt like I didn't buy into this whole thing of the religion piece, so it was like I was living a double life, even as a young man, like I was like the kid that was like traveling on the weekends, doing music on churches in front of people on stage. But, at the same times I'm like breaking into cars anytime I could. I was hanging with the rough crowd. We grew up in kind of the hood, I leaned to that direction anytime I could. So, and I think I started drinking young. I think I started smoking weed probably before I started drinking, because that was more accessible for me in junior high school, probably.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50-plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt Andersen and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment. To begin the process of recovery, to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
And I think for a lot of people that tended to be the case in some circumstances, is just readily available. And maybe I know friends that drank early is like, oh, my dad will notice if something's missing from the liquor cabinet, but this they won't notice because my parents don't do this.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no alcohol in my house. I never saw my dad take a drink. He got sober before I was born. I had some uncles that were pretty violent guys that I saw a lot of violence, in that with in regards to their wives and stuff like that. But honestly, I thought those guys were the coolest guys in the world. One of them carried a 38 and a bottle of fifth of whiskey around, man. I was like 12, 13 years old. I'm like, this guy's badass, So, I mean, honestly, it was intriguing to me because I didn't see that in my home, So
right. When we're dumb and impressionable. But you went through that. I mean, Flindt, you had a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah, there was a lot. What really upsets me, though, Boyce, is the trauma that you had when it comes to the church. That's that always just I get incensed by it because I have a faith and always have. And I have to tell you, I never experienced that, Now I did I use while I was going to church? Yes. I mean, I was the biggest hypocrite of all. I was singing on a praise team, singing in the choir, and I'm using in between services, on Sundays so I could get fired up for the second service.
Absolutely.
To the point to where I finally had to resign from the church because of my guilt, because of how I felt with it. But at that point, I just couldn't stop the addiction. But and to me, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that trauma piece, we all have trauma. I mean, mine obviously was because of these multiple surgeries I had as a kid and continued into my teenage years and early high or college years. But that trauma, to me, the church trauma, that we'll just call it that, is so evil. It's beyond evil to me. You know, not discounting other traumas. I'm not doing that, but there is just something so evil about that I just want to puke, you know. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why the church can't stop that stuff. Anyway, I don't want to get off on that too much, but that, I know that can make us go down roads that a lot of people don't understand, you know.
I was lost after that.
Sure.
Actually, you know, because what happened with me is, and you know, I'll just be candid. It was a man, and you know, and I was at that age of, you know, just becoming like teenish, you know. It threw me, you know. It threw me. I didn't know what my sexuality was, you know, like if that makes sense. So
yeah,
and then so that happens, and then, you know, my parents. I probably wouldn't even talk about this if my parents were both still here, because I never told them, because it got to be a point where it was like, what was the point, you know? And it wasn't like a long, that situation was like, didn't go on a long time, but it was a few times. One was really bad. And then what happened with me is I started going, I had women in my life that were associated with the whole church scene. Like, so we were a Southern gospel singing group. So we traveled we did like tent revivals all over. I mean, you know, down the country, like in Kentucky. I keep forgetting you guys are in California. So like in this part of the country, you know, we traveled. So it was just, and then it was sick to me after that. You know, I just couldn't, it threw me. And honestly, that set me on it was a huge part of what happened. And then I started putting stuff in my system, and, you know, I feel like I was born with alcoholism. So once I flipped that switch, you know, it was like, whoa, I found it, you know, and that kind of dictated where, you know, from there. And that was that. And then I think a big part of it was like, then, like I said, the women around that part of it, because I'm the same way. Like I have faith, and I've just in the last few years been able to, I kind of found my faith again, my God, through AA, honestly, because I hated the church. I wanted, you know, I didn't want, you know, and so it really hurt. It was hard. It was a big part of what, you know, my story is. So
yeah, well, and it's easy to, you know, when we have those kind of things, like you're saying, an anger at church, you know, I've said it here before. I knew I believed there was a God. I just didn't believe there was one that loved me, you know, for a variety of circumstances. So it's really can be so hard to come back around, let alone, you know, there's something about those scenarios that can put us back into that trauma state where we feel like that kid again or whatever it is. And like, we're not going to have the boundaries, and there's so much work that has to be done in the creation of boundaries, protect yourself, others, etc. That, it's hard. It's just tough. Trauma is just it's a
bitch.
It's a bitch.
It's an absolute bitch. Boyce, I wanted to ask you about your wife and Al-Anon. You know, we have support groups, family support groups here at Payne on Wednesday nights. We've had them for almost 14 years now. And we run ours a lot different than Al-Anon. Because we sit around a circle like everybody else, but we crosstalk, we throw it out there, you know, we do all that stuff. And I know in Al-Anon, that's the cross-talking that's not a thing, you know. Yes. That is just not a thing. And again, I like Al-Anon, I like that stuff, but I've always wondered how the hell does that even work? A lot. Okay. That's not even correct English. I don't you know, how does that, I mean, we've been, and I have to just say this, we've been so sick, and not that Al-Anon hasn't been successful, but we've been so successful at this because we get to, I'm there on Wednesdays. I tell parents what that addict's capable of, what they're not capable of. We do offer suggestions. There are times when we say, yeah, you need to do this. because if you don't, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. I'm just kind of curious how, kind of how that works and how your wife is involved with that a little bit.
Well, it's funny you say all this, because I feel like I think the biggest part of Al-Anon that she struggles with, because she isn't a person that goes to really very few meetings these days, and a lot of it's because of the way the Al-Anon program is run. I think that it's too tight. It's too, and I think that she really she works out of the books, some of the Al-Anon books, but and she lives the principles, I think, and like we do it some, because she learned it through that. But I don't, she isn't. I think that I feel like, and I think she feels like this too, that Al-Anon should be looser. Exactly what you're saying, like your program. It's kind of strange when you are in a meeting like that, and you kind of need some kind of solution to your problem, and they don't really. There's not a lot there. I don't feel like, and that's just here in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. I don't know.
Right.
I think our Al-Anon here is not very good.
Right. Well, and the other part of that too is, look, and Jason's actually experienced this because we do it by Zoom as well as in person, and we had somebody on Zoom a couple of weeks ago that, they kind of introduced themselves. And I went into my Flindt thing, all right, where it's like, hey, you got to be ready for this, and you got to, bam, they hit the button and they were gone.
Well, yeah, okay. It was a married couple, and the wife literally called them out and was like, well, hey, I'm on board. I've cut off our son, but my husband isn't. And you could tell they got a little cantankerous with each other, and then it was just the wife sitting there, and then eventually they logged off. Right. But it's the stuff that needs to be heard. If
Absolutely.
You're coming in and you don't want to hear, you can't enable the addict, or let's say I got up, for example, and I'm doing, sharing, and it would be helpful to have someone like that I trust going, like Flindt saying, hey, I'd really like you to think about this because you said this and this sounds like enabling behavior. So I think that's something you should really sit and question, And so I think that's the power of what you do when I've sat in on the meetings that is offered. There was a couple of people that just over and over, like, you're enabling them. But what if no, there's no buts. You are enabling.
If I wasn't in a recovering drug addict, and look, I mean, I'm 68. I've done damn near everything. Okay. I mean, there's no surprises for me when somebody tells me, well, I did this in my addiction. Oh, okay. So when I'm telling a parent that, or I'm telling a spouse that, it's because I lived it. It's because I lived it. It's because I experienced it. It's because I did it, and I know the addict's brain. I know our minds. I know where we're going to go with this thing, and to have somebody sit there, because I can get a little feisty, and to have somebody sit there and go, well, that's not right. Well, I'll come back at him and say, well, how the fuck do you know? Okay. Are you in recovery? No. Well, what's your qualifications then? But again, it's all done out of caring and compassion, for people, because my whole thing is I don't want to grow old with anybody. And I tell that group that I do not want to grow old with you. This parent support meeting is about getting you through this as quickly as we can, so you can go on and deal with your loved one, have your own life, enjoy your life. Right? I don't need you coming back, because if you're coming here 10 years from now, and then, by the way, it's fine. I mean, if they need a little tune up, but if you're coming on a regular basis for 10 years and not getting it, you're either not listening or I'm not doing my job correctly.
Hey, I agree 100%. And I think that, that's one thing about my wife is she really knows and works the part of, like, not enabling. I mean, like in my story, like, I pushed her to that point, but like in dealing with my daughter, and because she's actually my wife's stepdaughter. She's my daughter, who's Morgan, who's the drug addict. It's my first wife, and like I tell you what, when there's been times that I've had to lean in towards what Jenny wants, or not wants, or what she has to say, and it's truth, and I don't. It's hard. and the daddy shit in me comes out. This poor kid, mother just died. She's like, that's horseshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's pretty straight up. And I think
Right.
that's what's kind of turned her off with Al-Anon here, is that a lot of the meetings are like everyone. There's no solution. It's like everyone's talking about their day and all this. I mean, there's no direction.
Same old. Look, man, I tell you what, we'll give you the link to our Wednesday night meeting. She can chime in from Ohio.
Awesome. That'd be great. I would love to. I would like to check it out myself as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She works a solid she works a good program. Really does.
Good for her.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
How is it for you now? I mean, we've talked about your daughter, and I'm glad to hear she's gotten 6 months, and a solid 6 months seems to be that point. So she's pushing past that point of unfortunate relapse. But how is kind of you come with your own recovery and seeing that, as a parent?
It's been difficult, and
Sure.
and like a lot of my story is because for me, I feel like, I finally, after being in and out so many years myself, right? I had some years, I decided I could take pain pills, or that goes, and then it led me back to the bottle eventually after all that. I finally hit a point where I think in the last 3 years or so of like the drug and the alcohol, I'm not saying I'm recovered, right? But I feel like I'm in a good state. But now, man, like the problem is I don't know I'm learning how to live at 50 years old. I mean, I'm learning how to kind of live as an adult. And so having said that, as an adult man, I've never, I'm trying to learn how to be a man, really. I feel like in the last 3 years more. And it's it's been hard, man, because, I will enable her. I mean, there's been times I've had to be real, it's been kind of good that Jenny's been like, helped me with the hard line, because I've had to be real. It's been hard. I mean, my kid was homeless, you know what I mean? Like she was, and I have a house here and plenty of room, but I couldn't have her here. And,
right.
As a parent, as a dad, a broken man who's not really, I don't have any skill as a parent, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm doing all these freaking kids. I'm like, what? I don't know what happened. So, I'm trying to, to go through that. And I'm like, I just want to bring my kid here. And, I can't do that. I know that's not the right thing for her. That given that hard love, or that I can say it all really good, man. But when it comes to my own baby, like, it's hard. So, Jenny's been great help with that. I mean, not because who knows what it would look like if she wasn't just like at times like, hey, you can't do this. You're hurting her. She'll tell you in her story, she almost loved me to death, in my story early, because we did that dance for a long time of her trying to control and, so my using and drinking. So.
Oh, all too familiar.
All too familiar.
So when you were getting treatment, though, before we started recording, you had mentioned being on Suboxone, and that's the worst detox you ever went through. So was it a harm reduction program?
It was, yeah. Funny story is, so my wife works at a place here in Ohio called the Linder Center of Hope, and it is a drug and alcohol mental illness place, and so so when that happened, I ended up being one of the very first patients of their new little outlet hospital place. So yeah, it was with the doctor, and what happened with me is I had years of sobriety from drinking, but I was just not drinking. I wasn't really. Then I became a workaholic, because I can be that too. So yeah. It was about getting everything back. I wasn't allowed to come home for a while, and I was, and then I'm trying to get us back financially. So those years, I had about 2 years of good sobriety. Got to the point where I was a chef, and I'm working all the time, and I'm old and crusty, and I have diabetes, and I'm breaking my ankles and stuff, and so I felt like it'd be okay. I'm good. I talked my doctor into tramadol. Uh-huh. So and the story from there is, tramadol, I was instantly, it was over. I was just taking them. I was snorting, it was out of control. So then I told him these weren't strong enough, and he didn't know I was abused. So I talked him to Vicodin. This was years ago. So he was giving me my 3 little Vicodin, and he'd give me Vicodin, and I gave him to Jenny to control, like a good drug addict, husband, alcoholic. So
Been
he was
there.
giving me my 3. Started out nice, and then I realized you could snort a pill and it works a lot faster. So
Right.
she was giving my 3 little Vicodin a day, and she kept the bottle, and then it got out of control. And I was in the hospitality restaurant industry, and I was a chef, so that's like my whole crew. They were like drugged. It's no problem to get drugs in that business. So that went from to snorting 100 milligrams of Percocet a day, and then so what ended up happening is I get to a point and that I took out credit cards that Jenny didn't know about. I ran them up. I spent like $18,000. So all that happened, and I just flat ran out of money, and I was starting to get dope sick, and I was close. I never got to heroin, but I was close. I was right there if I wanted it. All I had to do was go to work, and I ended up. So the little bottle of Vicodin she had hid in the house. She'd hide shit because I'd find it.
Right.
So I'm standing in the living room of my home, and I'm like, I'm out of this. Is over. I can't. I have no more money. My credit cards are gone, and there's a planter right here. And I look down, and there's that bottle of Vicodin she had hidden right there. So I got them. I took like 40 of them, and I couldn't even get high anymore off of them. So then that's when I checked myself in, or I went to this place, and there was an outpatient program, and they started me on that Suboxone and a shit ton of gabapentin as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's what they do.
I've never heard that one brought up. What's that?
Gabapentin is it's actually used to sleep and anxiety and
neuropathy, diabetes.
Yep.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we use it in our treatment center, but we only use it for that detox time.
But he started me on on the Suboxone, and I did that whole thing, but I was on a pretty big dose of gabapentin. That's because I wasn't done, man. I was like, I need more and more. Give me what, So I didn't drink any while I was on Suboxone. I may have used a little bit. I can't really remember, but I was on it for years. And what happened in my case, so I have heart disease, right? I had a heart attack at 26. I've got all these stents. So what happened with me is combination of my heart disease, and the doctors never said this, right? But my testosterone level tanked, just tanked out of nowhere. And I ended up going back into the cath lab and having they replaced some stents from 20 years ago. And they said that I had a cardiologist tell me kind of off the books that this is possible. So I stopped. I'm done, Jenny. I'm done. She's like, that's a bad idea. Cause that's what she does. I mean, part of what she does assessments and stuff where she works. She's not a doctor or anything, but she's involved in helping people every day. So I'd stopped cold turkey, and it was awful. And I mean, my first detox from drinking, I was strapped down, I don't remember any of this. Like, I was in intensive care for 6 days. I get so hooked on alcohol when I drink. I pulled my catheter out twice. It was awful, but I got to tell you, man, there's 90 days to 4 or 5 months after quitting Suboxone like that. And I did it the wrong way, I guess.
How many milligrams were you taking when you stopped?
Oh, Flindt, I cannot remember. It was I think it was the highest dose that my doctor would give me.
So maybe 16 milligrams, maybe something.
Yeah, something like
lines?
that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's not good.
But it was terrible. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. And it took me a long time to get my head on right.
Yeah. Well, and again, Boyce, that's what a lot of people don't think about when it comes to this long-term harm reduction crap. And I'm going to say it that way. I have a treatment center. I believe in detoxing somebody medically the correct way. I do believe in short-term harm reduction, but I also believe that there has to be a taper program started, immediately. Because look, how many times are we going to strap somebody down to Suboxone or methadone? I know it. Jason knows, it took me 2 years to get off methadone. I did it myself. I went down 1 milligram a week. They had me on 190 milligrams of methadone. We all know that you can't go anywhere, do anything. You have to get it at the same place, you know. And if you forget your shit when you're out for the weekend or something, you're screwed. Okay.
Absolutely.
You're going right into withdrawals. And it's just not a quality of life.
It isn't.
The argument is, well, we're keeping them alive. And I get that, but keeping them alive for what? I'm not saying they need to be dead,
Right.
but what, think about the quality of life. And most of the time, when it comes to long-term harm reduction, it's with the people that have lost a child to this, because they're thinking, oh my God, if we could only have kept them on this, they would still be with us. But we all know as recovering addicts that we will fudge that harm reduction routine that we're on. You just said it. You just said it. I can't remember if I was using or not when I was taking Suboxone.
Yeah.
Right? Because we all did it. Hell, you could buy shit right outside the methadone clinic.
Yep.
You could buy Vicodin, you can buy Percocet, you can buy Oxy. Now you can probably buy fentanyl outside of those things.
You definitely can here in Ohio.
Oh, no question. Ohio, God, that's the epicenter, man. I mean, of this whole thing. But that's why I take such issue with long-term harm reduction. I think it's more harmful than it is good. And let me just say this, because since I'm on a little roll,
go for it, Flindt.
that harm reduction umbrella. Okay, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
You've got this umbrella that everybody's going, okay, harm reduction. Well, let's not forget that harm reduction is also wearing a condom so you don't get STDs and AIDS. Harm reduction is look, clean needles, even though I'm not a big advocate of that. All right. Harm reduction is putting on a seatbelt, for Christ's sake. Anything that's going to prevent us from doing damage to ourselves. Okay. So you almost have to put harm reduction in a 3 or 4 separate category. One's harm reduction for drugs, harm reduction for STDs, harm reduction for this, harm reduction for mental health, whatever it is. You can't lump all this stuff into one big pile.
Yeah. And say it works for everyone.
And say it works for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
And addiction, all we're going to do, I mean, look, San Francisco right now, God help San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But San Francisco right now, they are actually preaching this. There are politicians preaching, you know what? Don't inject fentanyl. Literally try snorting it. I'm going to show you that post. Okay. Try smoking it. Don't inject it. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? This is what this society has got to, or has come to. And I also believe that is a method for politicians to actually keep people down in that shithole, but are still voting.
Yeah.
So it's good. So they're going to get the vote from the person that is in that mess.
Absolutely.
My 2 cents.
You know, I heard a talk, or I don't know what, a while back, one of your talks where you're talking about on one of your shows, and it was you, Flindt, you're talking about the harm reduction, and you know, how Suboxone, methadone, you know, maybe for someone who's 65 years old, that's never gonna, you know, that their life is, you know, that you know, if you're 65 years old and you're coming off of fentanyl, because I'll be honest with you, here in Ohio, that's all there is. There is heroin's
gone.
I mean, it's like Zombieville around here, Flindt. I mean, right. Especially a few years ago. I mean, and I live kind of close to some of the counties that were like, I mean, people were dying. I mean, just mass people dying. It's awful every day. I have a cousin, just a year and a half ago, they found her dead. Like, they just dumped her body, man, downtown Cincinnati. It was so bad. But what we were saying is, like, if you take someone like that, maybe that's a different long-term use for them. But if you have a 20-year-old who has that whole life ahead of them, and you're going to put them on the strut, because you're absolutely right. That's what when my wife was working in that part of what she used to do. That's how it would work, man. If you wanted to go out of town and you didn't have, or take homes, like you were stuck. I mean, she had people come in all the time from like California. They're like, and they come to her place because they supposedly had it lined up there. There was a miscommunication. And then you have all the stories she would tell me, man, of people that would be like, what am I supposed to do? And the answer is like, go, you know, What do you think someone's going to do? They're going to go use. I mean,
Of course we are. Are you kidding me? I mean, if I got on if I was still on methadone and I got on a plane today and I flew to New York and I forgot my methadone, first of all, I would be in such a panic that by the time I got off that plane, I would have made some excuse to leave my wife there, my kids there, and I'm off and running, man, and I'm trying to find something the second my feet hit the ground.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's what people don't get. And you've always said this, and I can't remember where we got, maybe it was from the gal up in Canada. When you are strapped to that stuff, you live in that same 2-block area, right? When
Yep.
we're in our addiction, we live in that 2-block area. We're not going too far outside of that. Now it can be a little bit bigger, but you know what I mean. Our
Absolutely.
area, we ain't leaving that rat's nest, man.
Nope. I mean,
know.
when I was drinking, when I was drinking and using, I had the whole perimeter of my house, bottles hidden,
Yeah.
I mean, because that's how I use. I don't want to use. I mean, I want to be alone because I'm a liar. I'm
Right.
the kind of guy that with my wife, like that's probably done more harm to our marriage than anything is
The
lying.
lies.
She
Yes.
knew. I was so delusional at the end. I would have a I could have a bottle in my hand and say I'm not drinking.
Right.
But you're right. I would keep it, and I had to have it close. And I tell you a story my daughter told me real quick was one of her second overdoses. I think she told me, which was awful. She called me. And she's driving around. She just OD'd. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And at that point, I didn't know she had gone down that road completely. I know she was a benzo addict for most, through high school. And you talk about
That's
she was eating Xanny bars like candy. So she said, you know what happened, Dad? After I OD'd, they brought her back. There was no Narcan there. Somebody did CPR on her and saved her life. Wow. And someone's like, let me buy that from you.
Oh yeah.
They're like, that's the good shit. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Wow. It's just it's been, like I said, it's been bad in this part of the country, as you know, for a long time.
Long time.
And,
again, Ohio, Kentucky, Appalachia, all
Virginia,
those
Virginia,
West Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the OxyContin Express. I mean,
Yep.
that's where all this stuff got started. And I remember at one point, I can't remember if it was Cincinnati or Columbus, somewhere, that they were literally bringing in Burger King refrigerated trucks to store the bodies in because the morgues were full.
Yeah, I remember that there was 2 instances where there was some fentanyl and carfentanil I'd gotten on the street that was just like, and it was like every day you turn the radio on and it's like, well, 10 people. It was almost like a movie. It was crazy.
Right. No, when I say Ohio was the epicenter, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, Ohio is a hell of a thing to be famous for. Okay, but you probably had more deaths in Ohio than anywhere else in the country.
Yes, I think so. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Strange place to have the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Right.
Back in Ohio. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. What would Bill W. and Dr. Bob be doing
What
now?
would they all think about this stuff? Yeah,
I'd be like, read the fucking book.
That's right. It's all like I got mine right here.
Yeah.
That's
Boyce, I got it on Audible too. I've left here from work.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Yeah.
And Boyce, I don't know about what it's like back there, but out here, and then what I notice around the rest of the country too, nobody's talking about abstinence.
Nope.
I mean, what the hell? I mean, look, and I was telling my wife actually this morning because we were having a conversation about something else that she had to set me straight on, and most definitely, but she made perfect sense, and I'm turning around going, God, she makes sense, She's now I lost.
I can relate.
You're having a conversation with your wife this morning.
I was having a conversation with. Now, what the hell did she say?
Abstinence.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were talking about abstinence, and well, again, I guess the thing of it is the abstinence thing is really upsetting to me that we're not talking about it more, because we as a society want to take the easy way out on everything. And she was bringing that up to me, that's, from an outsider looking in, that's what it appears to be from her, who's not in recovery, does not have an alcohol or drug issue, never has in her life. But it looks like from the outside that we're all want to take the easy way here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we're actually going down that road. And I don't know how we put the brakes on it, but I guess it's guys like us. And when you talk to guys and women that are really have some time under their belts, that have been doing this a long time, almost every one of us will tell you abstinence is the way to go. Absolutely.
There's on every corner here in Cincinnati, Ohio, there's a treatment center. And I'm not going to say any names, but there's a big one here in Ohio now that, like it's huge. They're the biggest part of their program. You almost have to be on that deal to be in their program. I mean, they don't say you have to, but it's pushed so. I mean, there's very few facilities here, that aren't MAT programs, that are not, like even the one my daughter was in, like they were like, you need this. She had a doc. Wait a
minute. You're talking about that the treatment centers are actually pushing the harm reduction, and you have to be on this for.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Wow. My daughter had a doctor tell her he wasn't even a addiction guy. And he just told her that, I wish I could remember the percentage. The percentage of her staying sober without Suboxone was like so low. And I'm just
7% probably.
Yeah. And this guy's telling her this, but he's like, he's not even a therapist. He doesn't know anything about addiction, so I think it's harder, honestly, in my opinion. And I got a lot of friends in recovery business. I work here, and I know some people that it's probably harder to stay off of those drugs if you're coming in as, a heavy hitting fentanyl addict, than it is not to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I actually work for a guy who's, his dad founded, it's a place called the Prospect House here in Cincinnati. It's an old school recovery place. And part of what I do in my job is this guy's, had a head injury like 35 years ago, but I take him to meetings, and it's a really crazy, cool thing. But his father founded one of the only places really left around here in Ohio. Like you can't even have a vape in the building. You can't have your phone, man. They're like, it's a 90-day commitment. And I just was working with the cat that is back there again, it's like they're like, you can't be on any of that.
Right.
They don't even like any of the, they'll let you be on some meds, but they're real particular. I think they're even thinking about maybe allowing what's the shot, the naltrexone, is that what it is?
Vivitrol,
yeah,
naltrexone,
about allowing that maybe as part of their curriculum or whatever it is. But
well, see, I have no problem with Vivitrol or naltrexone being used. It's an opiate blocker, and I have I have a problem with this, is especially those two. Look, we give the addict the option. Let's see, would you like to have the injection, or would you like to have the pill, the oral side? Oh, well, I'll take the oral. I'll take the pill. Well, of course you will. Okay, because all you got to do is stop taking the damn thing on Wednesday, and by Saturday you're good to go. You can start using anything you want again.
Yeah.
To where the injection, at least that's a 30-day injection. That's going to, and then you have to come back in and take it again. That's a commitment, is what is anyway. It just doesn't.
Well, like you and I've talked about, Boyce, I don't know what you think. I just don't like a chink in my armor.
Yeah.
For me,
I
just don't want one. Like I've talked about here, I like smoking, using marijuana wasn't an issue. It wasn't even recreational. You could say I took a medicinal approach for pain and insomnia. But even then it was like, no, I'm not going to have a chink in my armor. Right. I'm not going to do this. For me, I knew it wasn't going to be a good long-term thing, because all I needed was that one night where it didn't work. And then somebody triggered whatever, crossed a boundary that I allowed. And what would I be doing? I'd be right around the corner at the convenience store buying some more booze. That's me.
Right. And Boyce, you said it again a little while ago. You said when you were taking those opioids right? That led you right back to your original drug of choice, which was alcohol. Do you know how many times I have said that in a parent meeting or in a speech or somewhere that's why abstinence is so important, because at some point we all have our drug of choice. We all have that one drug that gives us that one high that beats all others. And because I'm not an alcoholic, I never have been, but I guarantee you, if I start drinking, at some point, I'm not saying immediately, maybe not even 6 months down the road, but at some point, I'm gonna be affected by that, and I'm gonna find that Vicodin pill, that Oxy, whatever it is, and I am on the run again.
Absolutely, that's my story too. I can't get out of the reality of my head. This is the problem. The alcohol and drug is the solution. Really, honestly,
right?
I have to learn how to. That's where I am now. Honestly, is like, I'm learning how to
cope,
live life on life's terms. I know that sounds cliche or whatever, but just in maybe it's because I'm an old fart now. It's clicking with me a little bit.
I like old guys.
I feel like, that it just doesn't, it's just a crutch. You know what I mean? I have to learn how to treat what I have.
Yeah.
In the book and in the literature, it can be done.
Yeah.
It's like you said, no one wants to. It's like it's an easier, softer way, and it's just it's hard to watch, and
it is,
and it really is. So
because what, again, to me there is nothing. There's two things that are extremely important to me. One is loyalty over money, over fame, over anything is loyalty, and the thing I hate the worst is a wasted life. Is wasted talent, because everybody has a talent for something. I don't care what it is. You can be a chef. You can be a great host and podcast person. I don't care if you're the greatest garbage man. Everybody's got a talent somewhere. And that's, by the way, when somebody says, there's a great baseball player out there and you've got a God-given talent. Well, guess what? God gave the same talent. Let's use me for me to be a garbage man. That's my talent. I have to recognize that. And that's a God-given talent as well. It's just
Absolutely.
Not for the guys that are being superstars in athletics or music or anything else, and to waste that is, it's not only a slap in your own face. To me, it's a slap in God's face,
Yep. I agree.
I mean, I know this stuff. I know there's probably people out there going, that's bullshit and blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care. Okay.
Awesome. I love that. You're so right. It's so, that's like, and my story's been like, I told you about the music thing. I grew up singing and playing, and it was, then I love music, and I dabbled here and there. I played, in some bands and metal and out of church, and, like most of it was just like, oh, let's just go smoke some crack and go downtown. You know what I mean? So it was like, it's 3 a.m. the restaurant life, man. I mean,
sure.
Good Lord. I mean, I tell you, I have a passion for that as well, but now in these last year, I found music again, because I have a little worship group band. And we're trying to find our niche. And it's amazing how, like, people drop in your life. It's just like, two of the ladies that sing with me, one of them is a therapist. She's in recovery. The other girl has this story, Flindt, that is just like, I would love for you to hear her story sometime.
Sure.
You talk about like recovery and like having two lives, like Dr. Rob likes to say. I think it's Rob, or maybe it's you, Jason. I don't know. One of you guys. I don't know.
Maybe I stole it from Dr. Rob.
The only people that get a chance to have two lives, it's just, and I've been able to get back to that, because that's a part of me. It's a part. It's like whole healing. And I don't need to be on. I don't need to be on anything to have that. I don't need to. I don't want to be on another. I mean, I have to take insulin as a diabetic, right? I have to take that, but man, I wouldn't take it if I didn't have to. You know what I mean? So
it's funny you mentioned that. I don't know that I've ever shared this with you, but so Cassandra, my girlfriend, and I, we were going to see Kiss, and I said to her, she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, Kiss is one of my favorite bands ever." "Yeah, I know." And I'm like, I've never seen them, to my recollection, without at least drinking. I never got shithoused or blacked out, none of that stuff, but I've never seen them without some booze in me. this is kind of scary. I don't know if I'm going to have a good time. And I got up off my ass, sang every song at the end. You know, my voice is gone. I'm talking like Paul. All right, people, I'm Paul. You know, I had a blast.
Yeah.
So it is that cool thing too. When you talk about the two lives, that I get to like test a totally different like brain and experience. And I'll tell you what, with the exception of the first time I saw Kiss, this is the only other concert I really remember.
Sure.
And I think I saw him 20 something times.
Right.
So, you know, it's pretty
Yeah.
interesting that's what sinks in, you know?
It is strange to experience things like that. I've had that happen so much, you know, like lately, you know, the last few years, especially where I've done things that I'm like, I don't know if I've ever done this with not being loaded, you know. It's really terrible. I mean, because I started young, and I was in my 40s when I finally started, you know, to get sober from maybe not sober minded. That took a minute still, but before I was able to, you know, get sober with some years together. So,
well, I tell Jason that my biggest, seriously, besides my wife, okay, that I was scared to death of coming out of my last treatment center, my greatest fear was trying to hit the golf ball sober, because I learned how to play golf high.
Right.
You know, and standing up on that first tee, I did, man. I actually hit it, you know, with a little draw down the middle of the fairway. It was kind of nice. Now I fucked it all up since. Okay, but
that's awesome. It is.
Well, Boyce, anything else you want to throw in here before we wrap it up?
Well, yeah. Well, man, you know, actually, it's thank you for having me on. You know, I really dig your guys' passion for recovery in every way possible, and especially, the harm reduction piece. I mean, I listened to guys. You got all your guys' stuff. I was just listening to something just now, and you were touching on what we were just talking about, man. I'm grateful for your platform and all the stuff you do, and I feel like for me, like I'll just say this: in the last few years, I finally tapped into like what I feel like is the program of recovery. In my case, I know it's a 12-step. It's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I feel like anything that I need to face is in that. You know, if I work it, I'm a big guy. I'm a guy who likes work, thinks of 10, 11, and 12. You know, I like trying to stay in that, and that's what's changed my life. And since the whole COVID, I was a chef for 30 years, and I don't want to do that anymore. I have a passion for that business. You know, as far as drugs and alcohol, and it's just devastated it, the rest of the hospitality industry, but I don't want to work in it anymore.
Right.
So I've been blessed to have this kind of new life, man, and it's beautiful. So yeah,
cool.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Thanks, Boyce. This has been just a pleasure. You know, you're a good man. I love what you're doing. Seriously, we'll come to Ohio, man. Well,
Come on, man. What do I need to do to make that happen?
You know, just make it happen. We'll come out. We'll talk about recovery to whoever wants to listen out there, man.
I've got some friends that are in the treatment business that I might try to talk to. Maybe get you guys to come and get an audience for you.
That'd be wonderful, man. Just all you got to do is let us know. We'll be there.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page.